I remember the moment everything inside me finally broke. It happened in my own dining room, under warm lights, surrounded by people who claimed they cared about family. It was supposed to be a beautiful night, the night my husband celebrated his retirement after 30 years as a firefighter, a man who once saved strangers for a living. But that night, he didn't save me. He destroyed me. Mark stood at the head of the table, smiling for the guests, holding his mother's trembling hand. Loretta Barnes, 78 years old, frail on the outside, but sharper than a knife on the inside. And she had been bleeding me dry for months. $3,000 every month. And tonight, she wanted more. I whispered, "Loretta, I can't keep paying. I just can't." The room went silent. Her eyes narrowed, and she raised her voice just enough for every guest to hear. "You ungrateful woman. I gave you a family, and you won't give me what I deserve." Mark's jaw tensed. His face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. Then he screamed, "How dare you go against my mom, you stupid woman!" Before I could react, he grabbed the polished, stainless steel serving tray, swung it with all his strength, and slammed it into the side of my face. The impact echoed across the room like a gunshot. I collapsed. Warm blood trickled down my cheek, pooling on the hardwood floor. The guests froze glasses halfway to their lips. No one moved, no one spoke. Except Loretta. She clapped, and whispered, "That's my boy." I pushed myself up one palm against the bloody floor and looked straight at my husband. My voice was calm, too calm. "Mark, you just signed your own ending. You have no idea what I'm capable of." And the truth is, he really didn't. Because what happened after this moment, what I uncovered, what I survived, and what I did next, shocked even the police officers who eventually stood in this room. But before I tell you how a peaceful marriage turned into a battlefield, before I reveal the secret Loretta never wanted anyone to find out, we need to step back to where everything truly began. And trust me, you'll want to hear all of it. Before we continue, if you've ever faced a toxic family member, or if you simply don't want to miss the moment everything turns upside down, make sure to subscribe. You can always come back later when life gets busy. Now, let me take you to the first warning sign I ignored. The very sign that could have saved me if only I had listened. When people ask me now, "Grace, didn't you see the warning signs?" I always pause, because the truth is, the signs were there. They were small, almost gentle at first, like harmless cracks in a foundation you think will hold forever. But those tiny cracks were the beginning of an earthquake that would swallow my entire marriage. Back then, 10 years earlier, I believed I had finally found my safe place in the world. I was 40, a head nurse in a busy medical center, steady, responsible, tired, but proud of the life I'd built. I wasn't expecting romance. I wasn't even looking for it. But life has a funny way of placing people in your path exactly when you're not prepared. I met Mark Barnes on a quiet autumn morning when he brought in a young firefighter from his station for treatment. He held the boy's hand the whole time, whispering, "You're okay, buddy. Stay with me." Something about that image, the calm strength in his voice, the protective way he stood, made me look at him differently. He wasn't flashy. He didn't talk big. He just felt solid. And after the relationships I'd lived through, stability felt like a miracle. Mark asked me to coffee a week later. From that first conversation, he made me feel seen. He laughed at my tired jokes, listened when I talked about work, and never once made me feel less for being a woman who'd spent most of her life supporting everyone but herself. For a while, I thought I'd found my person, but the first shadow fell the day he introduced me to his mother. I remember standing on her porch, holding a basket of fruit I'd brought as a kind gesture. Loretta opened the door tiny and wrinkled, wearing a cardigan that looked older than both of us. She stared at the basket, then at me, and said, "You didn't bring flowers." Humph. It was a strange greeting, but I brushed it off. Older folks can be blunt. I grew up respecting elders, even when they were prickly. Inside, Loretta peppered me with questions: my salary, my savings, whether I owned my home, who my beneficiaries were. At the time, I thought she was just chatty in an odd way. I didn't realize she was gathering information like a detective preparing a case. Mark squeezed my knee under the table. "She's just curious," he whispered. I wanted to believe him. During the next few months, Loretta became a regular presence. She called Mark every evening, sometimes twice. She called me too, always with a tone halfway between fragile and controlling. "Grace, sweetheart, can you pick up some groceries for me?" "Grace, honey, I need my prescription filled." Mark forgot. "Grace, dear, my back hurts. Can you come check on me?" The first time, I went willingly. The 10th time, I went out of obligation. The 50th time, I went because saying no somehow felt like abandoning a lonely old woman. But there was something else, something quieter, something I didn't fully notice until much later. Every time Loretta called, Mark became tense. Every time she complained, he rushed to fix it. Every time she sighed dramatically, he dropped everything. And every time I gently suggested she might be exaggerating, his voice turned tight. "She's all I have, Grace. She raised me alone. Don't make this harder for her." One evening, I stopped by Loretta's house. After she insisted, she was in terrible pain. When I arrived, she was perfectly fine, eating cookies and watching a game show. "Oh," she said casually when she saw me. "You came. Good. Bring in my mail." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. Inside her mailbox, I found dozens of old envelopes, doctor bills, insurance, statements, notices. Some looked suspiciously outdated. Some were even torn open and taped back shut. When I handed them to her, she snatched them like a child, caught hiding something. "What's all this?" I asked gently. "Nothing. Mind your business." It was the first time she raised her voice at me. Mark brushed it off later. "She gets confused sometimes. She's older." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But something about those envelopes stayed with me. A strange, quiet knot in my stomach whispering, something isn't right. Still, Mark was good to me. Thoughtful, attentive, generous, in all the ways that mattered to a woman who'd spent her life caring for everyone else. I wanted the relationship to work. And so, like many women hoping for love, I ignored the knot. I didn't know then that the envelopes weren't random, that Loretta had created fake bills before, that she had a pattern make herself look helpless, then make everyone around her responsible. I didn't know, but I was about to learn, because the next warning sign wasn't an envelope. It was a key to my home, one she should never have had. And that key was the beginning of my downfall. If the envelopes were the first crack in the foundation, the key was the moment the entire structure shifted under my feet. Back then, Mark and I had been dating a little over a year. Things felt stable, comfortable, familiar in a way I had prayed for. After a long, exhausting decade of trying and failing to build a family with someone who didn't value me. When Mark finally proposed, it wasn't dramatic. No fancy restaurant, no big orchestral swell, just the two of us. On my back patio, under the glow of my garden lights, his voice soft as he said, "Grace, I want to build a life with you. I want to come home to you." It felt sincere, and I trusted sincerity more than any diamond on earth. So we married in a simple courthouse ceremony with just a few close friends. Loretta insisted she was too frail to come, then posted pictures of herself at a bingo night an hour later. I laughed it off. Denial is easier than conflict, especially when the conflict is with a mother-in-law whose son worships her. After the wedding, Mark moved into my house, a small, sunny place I had bought after years of 12-hour shifts and skipped vacations. It wasn't big, but it was mine. Every corner held the story of a woman who built herself from the ground up. At first, having Mark there felt right. We cooked together. We watched old shows. We rebuilt the fence with our own hands. But the peace didn't last. Within the first month, Loretta started showing up more often. At first, she knocked. Then she rang the bell. Then she called Mark to say, "I'm outside. Tell Grace to open the door." I began to feel like a guest in my own home. One afternoon, after a long shift, I came home to find her standing in my kitchen, wearing one of my aprons and stirring a pot of soup. I blinked, unsure of what I was seeing. "Oh, Grace," she said, with an airy wave. I let myself in. "I knew you'd be tired. Your house was a mess. I cleaned up a bit." My house was never a mess. Not once. Not in 10 years of living alone. But that wasn't what struck me. It was her words I let myself in. I turned slowly. "Loretta, how did you get in?" She smiled sweetly, too sweetly. "Mark gave me a key. He said I should have one, just in case." Just in case. 3 little words that made my stomach drop. When Mark came home later, I asked him. Not angrily, not accusingly, just asking. He rubbed his neck. "Grace, she's older. What if there's an emergency? She might need to come here. But this is my house, Mark. My home. You can't give out keys without telling me." He frowned. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." Nothing. That word echoed in my head long after we stopped talking. In the weeks that followed, Loretta treated the house like her second home. She opened cabinets, rearranged things, commented on everything from my choice of curtains to the amount of salt in my soup. She always said it in that soft, pitying tone that made me sound incompetent. "You poor thing. No wonder Mark is losing weight. Look at these meals. You put the towels like this. Oh dear. No wonder the corners curl. You don't have any real family, do you? It shows." Mark defended her every time. One Saturday, while Mark was running errands, I walked into the living room and froze. The framed photographs on my shelves, pictures of my parents, my niece, even a picture of my late dog had been removed. In their place were pictures of Mark's childhood. Mark as a baby, Mark in a firehouse uniform at 19, Mark and Loretta on a cruise 10 years ago. Every picture frame, every single one, my breath caught. I whispered, "Loretta, what are you doing?" She was sitting on my couch like she owned it. "Oh, Grace, this is Mark's home now too. Shouldn't the home reflect the man of the house? The man of—" I couldn't even finish the thought. "This is my house," I said softly. Loretta sniffed. "For now." 2 words. Sharp, cold, calculated. That night, Mark accused me of disrespecting his mother and said maybe I needed to loosen up and share more. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling something dark unfurling in the corners of my home. Something I couldn't yet name. And then the moment that sealed my fear as truth. One morning, after a night shift, I walked into the guest room and found Loretta's suitcase fully unpacked. Clothes hanging, nightgown on the bed, slippers neatly lined up. She hadn't just visited, she had moved in. and Mark hadn't said a word. I stood in the doorway, the smell of lavender powder filling the room, and whispered to myself, this isn't a crack anymore. This is a fracture. But the real break, the moment everything crashed beyond repair, was still waiting for me. Just one room away. People often think financial manipulation happens suddenly, like someone reaching directly into your wallet and taking everything you own. But that's not how it works. It begins with sympathy, then obligation, then guilt, until one day you realize you're not helping anymore, you're being drained. Loretta's move into the guest room changed something in the house. Not just the space, the air itself. She floated through the halls like she'd always lived there, humming old hymns, sighing dramatically whenever I walked past her, clutching her lower back, as if the sight of me alone increased her pain. For weeks, she played the role of the fragile elder so convincingly that even I began to question myself. Until money came into the picture. It started quietly. One morning, I found Mark in the kitchen wallet, open, counting cash he could barely afford to part with. "What's going on?" I asked. He sighed, tired and irritated. "Mom needs a little help. She's behind on her prescriptions again." Behind. Again. I remembered the envelopes, the taped ones, the strange dates. But I pushed that thought aside and offered to help organize her medical paperwork. Mark snapped, "Can you just trust her? She's my mother." So he handed her 100, then 2, then 5, and suddenly, just a little help became a routine monthly, then weekly. One afternoon, while preparing dinner, I overheard Loretta on the phone in the guest room. Her voice was low-hushed, but sharp. "Yes, I'll have the money soon," he promised. "No, she won't stop him. She's soft." Soft. The word hit harder than it should have. That evening, I confronted Mark gently. "Why is your mother behind on her bills again? She gets Social Security. She said she gets help from the fire department's support fund. Where's her money going?" Mark slammed a kitchen drawer with more force than necessary. "Stop interrogating her. She's 78 years old. She forgets things. You're a nurse. You should understand this." I did understand memory issues. But Loretta's forgetting always seemed to happen right before she needed cash. Over the next 2 months, the requests grew. First $300, then $500, then $1,000. Eventually, Loretta began directing her requests to me. "Grace, dear, Mark's money is tied up this month. Could you send a little something for my medication?" I offered to take her to the doctor instead, or to refill the prescription myself. She refused sharply. "No, I can do things myself. Just give me the money." There it was, the mask slipping. When I didn't transfer the money immediately, she complained to Mark. That night, he stormed into our bedroom. "Why are you being so selfish lately?" She raised me alone. "Grace, alone. That matters." I nodded slowly. "And who raised me? Who supported me? Who paid for this house? Who works double shifts to keep us afloat? While your mother lives here, without contributing a penny." His expression hardened. "Are you saying my mother is a burden?" I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is safer, but silence doesn't stop the truth. And the truth came out by accident. One afternoon, I got home earlier than usual. The house was quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It was the quiet of someone doing something they shouldn't. I headed to the living room and froze. Loretta was on my couch, hunched over filling out paperwork. When she saw me, she jolted like a startled animal, shoving papers under a blanket. "What are you doing?" I asked softly. "Nothing. Mind your business." But a single sheet had slipped out. I bent, picked it up, and my heart stopped. It was a statement from a casino, a gambling account, recent transactions, withdrawals, charges, losses. Thousands and thousands of dollars. Loretta lunged for the paper. Give me that. I held it tight. Loretta, have you been gambling? She bared her teeth in a twisted little smile. Don't you dare judge me. I have my needs. And if Mark wants to help his mother, that's between us. Between us. Not between us and him. No, between them. Always them. I confronted Mark that night, hoping for honesty. Instead, he looked exhausted, ashamed, and defensive. She plays the machine sometimes. It helps her cope. Losing Dad wasn't easy on her. I stared at him. Mark. Her husband died 15 years ago. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was there, sitting heavy between us. Loretta wasn't helpless. She wasn't frail. She wasn't forgetting anything. She was feeding a habit. And she was using Mark, and soon me, to pay for it. But the real twist came when I checked our joint account, the one we agreed to use only for shared expenses. Money was missing, thousands. I confronted Mark again, my voice trembling. Did you take money from our account? His shoulders slumped. I'll pay it back. She needed help. She needs help, I whispered, but not the kind you're giving. I didn't know it then, but Loretta's addiction wasn't even the worst part. No, the worst part was the plan she was building behind my back. A plan that had everything to do with my house and nothing to do with medicine. There's a certain kind of betrayal that doesn't scream. It doesn't storm into your life with fists raised. It creeps in quietly, rearranging things when you're not looking, until one day your own home no longer feels like yours. The day I discovered the missing money, something in me began to wake up. A small, stubborn spark of self-preservation I hadn't felt in years. I stopped ignoring the signs, and that's when the real picture began to emerge. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. I came home from a long shift, 12 hours too many patients, and not enough coffee. The house was strangely quiet. No TV, no humming from Loretta's room, no clattering from Mark in the kitchen, just silence. I turned into the hallway and froze. Loretta's door was half open. Inside, she was speaking in a low whisper, on speakerphone, unaware I was only a few feet away. Don't worry, she said sharply. I'll get it. The house is worth at least $400. Once it's in his name, we can refinance. Grace won't be a problem much longer. I stopped breathing. Refinance house. In his name. Grace won't be a problem. I stepped closer. The voice on the other end, a man's, asked, You sure she'll sign? She sounds stubborn. Loretta laughed. A dry, cruel sound. She will. She just doesn't know it yet. A chill crawled up my spine. I pushed the door open fully. Loretta looked up, startled eyes narrowing when she realized I'd heard everything. She hung up without saying goodbye. What exactly won't I be a problem for? I asked, standing in the doorway. She smoothed her cardigan, lifting her chin like a queen, caught misbehaving, but unbothered by consequences. Oh, Grace, she said sweetly, you always take things the wrong way. I heard what you said. You think you did. But you don't understand the pressures Mark is under. He deserves stability. A real home. This is a real home, I cut in quietly. Her smile sharpened. Yours, not his. There it was. The truth even sharper when spoken aloud. You want me to sign the house over, I said. Loretta didn't even bother denying it. Of course. He's your husband. That's what good wives do. They build the future on solid ground. And right now, you're the one standing in the way. Before I could respond, Mark walked in behind me. He looked between us, then instantly moved to his mother's side, like a magnet pulled by a stronger force. What's going on? He asked. I turned to him. You didn't tell me your mother is planning to transfer the house. Loretta gasped, dramatically. I wasn't planning anything. Grace is twisting my words, but Mark didn't look at her. He looked at me, and in that moment, The truth flickered in his eyes. The guilt, the fear, the desperation. He knew everything. "Grace," he started softly, "just hear us out. Us, not me." Suddenly, it was 2 against 1. A team I never signed up for. "Mark," I said quietly, "did you give her access to our bank again?" He closed his eyes. That was all the confirmation I needed. Loretta stepped forward, jabbing a finger toward me. "You have no idea what real family does. A real wife supports her husband. A real daughter supports her elders. I raised Mark alone. I sacrificed everything for him. And now he finally has a chance to build something." "With my house," I whispered. She smirked. "With our house. Or it will be." Mark ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a man carrying a secret heavier than his spine. "Grace, I've been talking to a financial advisor," he said. "He says putting the house under my name, too, could help us secure a loan. Mom's medical bills." "No," I says. Flatly. "Grace, please, don't make this difficult." "I'm not making it difficult," I replied. "I'm making it clear." That should have ended the conversation. But Loretta wasn't done. She walked up to me until we were nearly nose to nose. "You think he married you for love?" she hissed softly. "Honey, men don't stay for long when women your age stop being useful. Be smart. Secure the marriage while you still can." My heart slammed against my ribs. Mark grabbed her arm. "Mom, stop." But she yanked away. "No, she needs to hear it. The only thing she has of value is this house. And if she doesn't sign it over, she'll lose Mark too." The silence after those words felt like a storm about to break. Loretta looked triumphant. Mark looked trapped. And I suddenly felt something new. Not fear, not confusion, not guilt. Clarity. Loretta had no boundaries. Mark had no spine. And I was living with 2 people who saw my life's work as nothing more than a bank account with a roof. But the real twist wasn't the house. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the manipulation. It was what I discovered the next morning, something hidden in Mark's truck glove compartment, something that proved Loretta wasn't acting alone, and that the plan for my house was only step 1. Most people think betrayal is loud, that it announces itself with shouting, slamming doors, broken plates. But the deepest betrayals, they hide in quiet places, like glove compartments. The morning after Loretta tried to corner me into signing the house over, I left early for work. My hands were shaking too much to hold my coffee. I needed air, clarity, space. My car wouldn't start. "Dead battery." "Just take my truck," Mark called from the porch. "We'll figure yours out later." His truck was old, but reliable, so I grabbed the keys and left. Halfway down the street, the glove compartment popped open on its own when I hit a small bump. Papers spilled onto the passenger seat. At first, I ignored them. I was tired, emotionally drained. But then, I saw my name on an envelope, in handwriting that wasn't Mark's. My breath caught. I pulled over, heart thudding, and opened it. Inside was a printed form titled Quitclaim Deed, Transfer of Ownership, and below that, from Grace Holden to Mark Barnes. The signature line was empty, but there were several practice signatures of my name scribbled across the bottom. My knees went weak. I shuffled through the rest of the papers. A loan application, a refinancing request, projected equity withdrawals, all with my address, my home, my signature forged sloppily but unmistakably. And then the final blow, a handwritten note in Loretta's shaky cursive. "Mark, she'll resist at first. Do what you must. Remind her she owes you a future. She'll sign. Eventually, she just needs a little pressure. Do what you must." Pressure. The words spun around in my mind like poison. I sat there in the parked truck, hands pressed to my face, letting a wave of realization crash over me. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't helping family. It was a plan, a coordinated, deliberate plan to take my home, my equity, my life's work. The entire relationship, our arguments, Loretta's sudden dependence, the guilt trips, it all clicked into place. Mark wasn't just under his mother's influence. He was her partner in this. His silence, his defensiveness, the missing money, the constant pressure to be a family. It wasn't love, it was strategy. I don't remember driving to the hospital. I went through the motions of my shift like someone floating through a dream they didn't ask to be in. But part of me, the part that had been a nurse for decades, the part that stayed calm in crisis, began quietly gathering strength. By the time my shift ended, I wasn't numb anymore. I was furious. When I got home, Loretta was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup like she owned the place. Mark sat at the table, scrolling on his phone. I held up the papers. Whose idea was it? I asked softly. Mark's eyes lifted. He froze. Loretta turned around slowly and smiled. A thin, knowing smile. Oh, you found those, did you? She didn't look scared. She didn't look ashamed. She looked amused. Grace, Mark said quickly, rising from the table. Just let us explain. Explain what I asked. The forged signatures, the planned refinancing, the part where I just need a little pressure. Loretta clucked her tongue. Stop being dramatic. It's just paperwork. Everyone does it. No, Loretta, I said softly. Criminals do it. She shrank back, not in fear, but in fury, like a cornered animal. Mark stepped closer. We were trying to build a future. You can't expect me to provide for a family when I don't have anything in my name. You have everything. I have nothing. The words hit like cold water. Mark, you moved into my home. I pay most of the bills. I've supported us. How can you say you have nothing? He slammed his fist on the counter. Because it's not mine. Nothing here is mine. Loretta placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, See, she'll never understand what a man needs. Something cracked inside me. Not physically, emotionally. A clean, sharp break. I took a slow breath. You were going to force me, I said quietly. Weren't you? He didn't answer. Loretta did. All women give. Eventually, she said. They sign, they settle, they surrender. You're just making it harder than it needs to be. I stared at them, two people who claimed to be my family, united only in greed. Then I said something I hadn't said in a very long time. No more. Mark froze. Loretta blinked. The air seemed to tighten. What does that mean? Mark whispered. It means, I said, voice steady, that whatever game you're playing ends tonight. Loretta scoffed. You don't have the strength. But she was wrong, because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet resolve of a woman who finally understands she's in a war she never asked for, but is more than capable of winning. I walked past, then went straight to my bedroom and locked the door. Behind me, I could hear them whispering, fast, frantic whispers that told me something. They thought they still had control. They were wrong. Because this time, I wasn't just angry. I was awake, and the next thing I would uncover would prove just how far Loretta and Mark were willing to go. Not just to take my home, but to erase me from it entirely. Most people think danger arrives with a shout, a slammed door, a raised fist. But sometimes, danger arrives in whispers. Quiet, hurried, terrified whispers. From the two people plotting against you. Behind my locked bedroom door, I could hear them murmuring in the kitchen. Low, urgent, like the sound of insects chewing through wood. I leaned against the door listening. She knows, Loretta hissed. You let her see the papers, you fool. I didn't let her. They must have fallen out, Mark snapped back. Stop blaming me. You were supposed to be careful. You said she'd sign easily. Well, she didn't, did she? So now we need to push harder. Push. That word again. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. A few minutes later, the voices softened. Then, footsteps. A knock. Grace Mark said through the door, his voice painfully calm. "Open up. Let's talk." "No," I said simply. A beat of silence. "Grace." He tried again. "You're acting paranoid. You're blowing things out of proportion. Come out and sit with us. We can explain everything." Loretta added sweetly, "Don't make me worry, dear. I have a heart condition." I almost laughed. Her heart was made of steel and venom. It didn't fear anything. I didn't respond. Eventually, their footsteps retreated. I sat on the edge of the bed, breathing slow and steady, forcing myself to think, not feel. My house was no longer safe. My marriage was a trap, and I was living with two people who believed they could manipulate or intimidate me into handing over everything I'd built. But they were about to learn something important. A woman who has nothing to lose is the most dangerous kind. The next morning, I left the house before dawn. I didn't take my car or Mark's truck. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't even use the front door. I slipped out through the backyard gate and walked 2 blocks before calling a ride. My destination, the county registrar's office. The moment they opened, I was the first person through the door. I requested copies of any recent inquiries, filings, or attempts to modify my property title. The clerk typed quietly, then frowned. There were 2 attempts, she said. 1 last week, 1 3 days ago. Both denied because the required owner's signature was incomplete. My stomach dropped. "Did they submit documents?" I asked. "Yes, with attempted signatures." The system flagged them as inconsistent. She slid a copy across the counter. My name, but not my handwriting. Clumsy loops, wrong angles. A clear forgery. My hands were trembling when I left the office, but my mind was razor-focused. Next stop, an attorney. Not the small-town lawyer who handled my medical paperwork. Not someone friendly or casual. I needed an attorney who specialized in property theft, forgery, and domestic coercion. By noon, I was sitting in front of attorney Miriam Caldwell, a woman in her late 50s, with silver hair, sharp eyes, and the expression of someone who had seen every form of human greed. I handed her everything: the forged documents, the refinancing attempts, Loretta's cruel notes, the bank withdrawals. And then I told her the whole story. She didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. When I finished, she tapped her pen lightly on the table. "Grace," she said, "you are in real danger. This isn't just manipulation. This is orchestrated financial abuse and attempted property theft." I swallowed hard. "I know." She leaned forward. "You need to act fast. This kind of situation escalates quickly, especially when the perpetrators feel cornered." Cornered. Yes, that's exactly how Mark and Loretta sounded last night. "What do?" I whispered. Miriam's voice was calm, professional, deadly precise. "First, you file a protective order. Not for violence, though that may come, but for financial exploitation and coercion. Georgia law allows that. Second, you separate all finances immediately. Freeze joint accounts. Redirect your paycheck to a private bank. Third," she paused, locking eyes with me, "you need to remove them from your home. Legally, forcefully, and immediately. As of today." I exhaled slowly. A weight lifted, terrifying, but liberating. "And lastly," she said, leaning back, "you must not go home alone." I blinked. Why? Because people like Mark and Loretta don't give up when confronted. They escalate. And from what you've described, they are already desperate. Desperate. That single word lodged itself in my chest. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting Miriam's words settle. Protective order, frozen accounts, eviction order, police escort. It was a plan, a real plan, a path out of the nightmare. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. By the time the sun set and I returned home, with 2 officers at my side, something felt off. The house was dark, too dark, the kind of dark that feels intentional. One of the officers knocked loudly. "Police." "Anyone inside?" Silence. We entered. The living room was empty. Loretta's room was stripped drawers, open clothes gone. Mark's closet half empty. The kitchen cleared of their things. A chill slid down my spine. They were gone, but not quietly. On the dining table sat a single folded note, with my name on it. I opened it with numb fingers. "You think you've won, but we're not done. Not until we get what we deserve." No signature, just spite. The officers exchanged glances. "Ma'am," one of them said carefully, "this sounds like a threat." I nodded slowly, because it was more than a threat. It was a promise that the storm wasn't over. Not yet, because the next time Mark and Loretta appeared, they wouldn't be coming for an argument. They'd be coming for everything. There are moments in life when the world grows so still, so silent, that you can hear your own heartbeat louder than anything else. That night, standing in my dimly lit dining room with the police officers beside me, reading Loretta's spiteful note, I felt that silence wash over me. A warning, a promise, a storm gathering at the edge of my life. But I didn't crumble, not this time. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar rise inside me. A resolve, carved from every shift I'd survived, every heartbreak I'd endured, every inch of independence I'd ever earned. They wanted a war. I was ready. The next morning, Attorney Caldwell filed all emergency motions. Protective order, financial protection, immediate eviction. Everything was now legal, official, and documented. But paperwork couldn't protect me from what came next. That evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, the doorbell rang. Once, twice, a long, aggressive third time. I froze, then exhaled, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. Mark stood on the porch. He looked unrecognizable, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. Behind him, half hidden in the shadows, was Loretta Arms, crossed lips, curled in a thin, poisonous smile. "Grace?" Mark said, voice hoarse. "We need to talk." "No," I said calmly, "we really don't." He stepped forward. "You can't lock us out. You can't just take everything." I didn't take anything, I said softly. I protected what was already mine. Loretta pushed past him, leaning in close enough that I could smell mint lozenges on her breath. "You think paperwork scares us?" she hissed. "You think the law protects you, honey? Men like Mark don't walk away without compensation." Something inside me snapped. "You forged my name," I said, voice low. "You tried to steal my house. You drained our accounts. And you want compensation." Loretta smirked. "Of course. Marriage is a partnership." "Then, where was the partnership when you stole from me?" I whispered. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand, and something shifted in my voice. "Loretta, Mark, this ends here." But Mark was unraveling. He stepped closer, jaw clenched. "You ruined everything. My job is gone. My savings gone. I have nothing left." "You did that to yourself," I said quietly. "No," he shouted. "You did. If you had just signed the house over, none of this would have happened." Loretta clapped her hands sharply. "That's right. Mark, tell her she needs to learn." He took another step, anger rising like boiling water. "After everything I gave you, my time, my life, you pay me back like this. You owe me something." "I owe you nothing," I said. That was when he snapped. His hand shot forward fast, reckless, reaching for my arm. But before he touched me, a harsh beam of light cut through the porch. A police cruiser pulled up, tires grinding against the curb. 2 officers stepped out. One of them, a tall woman with a stern jaw, called out, "Mark Barnes, you were served a temporary protective order this morning. You cannot be here." Loretta shrieked. She tricked him. She trapped him. She's lying. The officer ignored her completely. Sir, step away from the door. Now. Mark looked at me, eyes wide with disbelief, betrayal rage, then back at the officers. You called them, he whispered. No, I said quietly. The court did. The officers approached, and, resting near their belts, Loretta grabbed Mark's arm. Don't let them do this to you. Fight back. But the officer cut in sharply. Ma'am, you are also named in the protective order. Step away from the property. Now. Loretta's face twisted into something ugly, darker than I'd ever seen. You think this is over, she spat. You think a piece of paper can stop us. You destroyed our lives. You'll regret it. But for the first time, her voice trembled. Fear, real fear. Mark looked at his mother, then at me, then at the officers. Something crumbled inside him. His shoulders sagged, his fists unclenched, his anger drained into exhaustion. I just wanted something of mine, he whispered. I felt a surprising calm wash over me. Mark Weiss said softly, you had something. You had a home. You had a wife who cared. You had a chance to build a real life. And you threw it away. He stared at the ground. The officers escorted them down the walkway, Loretta shouting curses, Mark stumbling beside her. They were loaded into separate patrol cars, not arrested, but removed. Removed from my home. Removed from my life. The porch grew quiet again. Still, peaceful, free. I stepped inside and locked the door. But as the quiet settled, something inside me cracked, not from fear, but from soul-deep sadness. It wasn't the loss of Mark. It was the realization that the person I fought hardest to protect was myself. And what I didn't know then, what I couldn't know, was that the fallout from this night would change my life forever. Because the final twist was still waiting for me. And it would arrive not from Mark, not from Loretta, but from someone I never expected. In the weeks after Mark and Loretta were removed from my home, the world felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful at first, not comforting, just quiet, like the silence that follows a long storm when you're not sure if another wave of thunder is coming. For the first time in months, I slept without listening for footsteps in the hallway. I drank my morning coffee without bracing for accusations, guilt trips, or whispered schemes. I walked through my home, my own home, touching the walls, the table, the picture frames, as if claiming them all over again. I thought that was the end of my story. But life rarely wraps things neatly. About a month later, I received a letter. Not from the court, not from Mark, not from Loretta. It was from Mark's older sister, a woman I had spoken to only twice in my entire marriage. Her handwriting was neat, steady, the opposite of Loretta's frantic scrawl. She wrote, I'm sorry. I should have warned you. Our mother has done this before. She destroyed Mark's first marriage the same way. She convinced him the house belonged to her, manipulated him until he snapped. His ex-wife barely escaped. None of us stopped it. I hope you can forgive him one day, not to take him back, but to free yourself. I sat with that letter for a long time. It didn't excuse him. It didn't erase the lies or the betrayal, but it gave me something I didn't expect. Context. Mark wasn't born toxic. He was raised in it, shaped by it, pulled into a web of control he never learned how to escape. And Loretta, well, some people build their identity out of their wounds and then use those wounds like weapons. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and exhaled the heaviness I had been carrying. I realized something important that day. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I finally chose myself, my boundaries, my safety, my future. Not long after, I repainted the living room, bought new curtains, hung my family photos back on the shelves where they belonged. Every small change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I hadn't realized I'd lost. And eventually, peace returned. Quiet, gentle peace. The kind that doesn't rely on anyone else. The kind I built on my own. Before I end my story, let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed in a relationship long after the love was gone, simply because you hoped, deep down, that the person you loved could be better, could be different, could be who they were in the beginning? If you have, you're not alone. Not at all. And if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that we survive, we grow, we learn, and we rise again. You never know. The next story might be the one that gives you the strength to reclaim something you thought you'd lost forever. Thank you for listening, and take care of your heart. It's the only home no one should ever be allowed to steal.